Hi, welcome back to Money, Money, Money. Mohit Gang of Moneyfront is with us, and we're talking about some practical rules of investing. So we've already discussed 4 rules. The next one also sounds, well, Mohit, the thing with these rules is that there are just too many numbers, right? So the next one is also 1053. What does this indicate to someone like us?
Sure. I think it's just coined in terms of numbers to make it simpler and quick to understand, basically, because the number itself tells you the whole story. This again, I think, has emanated over a period of time because of a lot of false commitments being given in the market. If you meet and I don't blame anybody out here, but you will find quite a number of people giving unreasonable hope to investors on the returns which they can make out of their investments. I've seen many cases where equity returns have been promised upwards of 15%, 18%, 20%, so on and so forth, showing some past returns which are 1 or 2 years recent returns, right? And I think for investors, it's absolutely critical that whenever they're investing for a very long term, which is like 10 years, 15 years, to assume very realistic numbers. In fact, it's better to err on the side of caution on this one. And that's where the 10-5-3 rule comes in, which says that from equities over a very long horizon, assume 10% returns, from debt, assume 5% return, and from cash, assume 3% return. Now, you can argue and say that equities could be 12, debt could be 6, and cash could be 4. But again, I would say it's better to err on the side of caution, because in next 20 years, I think India will turn out to be a matured economy and all the numbers will taper down more realistically. And for a very long-term financial planning exercise, it's better to go with a 10-5-3. You will never get disappointed in the long run, right? And it also kinds of checks you, gives you a good check when someone is committing you a very unreasonable number, which could be on equities. It's more often than not where people tend to commit greater numbers. So you can always keep that thing in mind and keep this rule by your side to be very realistic.
Okay. Mohit, the other thing is that, these last 2 years of the pandemic have really brought to fore the fact that not a lot of people didn't have, emergency corpus with them, or if it was available, maybe it was not sufficient. So, what is the right amount? Is there a rule for this?
Oh, absolutely. I think personal finance begins with building the emergency corpus first, and then rest everything else falls in place. I think that fundamental rule doesn't go away any point in time. The basic rule says 3x of your monthly salary is what you should keep aside, absolutely liquid. When we say absolutely liquid, it means it has to be a sweepable FD or a cash balance in your account. Even liquid funds, to that matter, in my personal opinion, I think is not great when you need an emergency corpus. Now, there are 2 tweaks to it. If you're building an emergency corpus, which is 6x of your monthly salary, then obviously you can have some portion in liquid funds and the rest in sweepable FDs, because that's immediately withdrawable. However, the minimum criteria out here is that you have to keep 3 times your monthly salary aside, which can be withdrawn overnight under any exigency in any emergency scenario. And that's absolutely must for everyone.
The other thing more that I want to highlight is that naturally the new India has a lot of aspirations, right? But what we notice as a result of that is that people might be overextending themselves in terms of the amount of loans that they're taking. So what is the optimum amount of EMIs that somebody should be having with them?
Oh, Sumera, I think buy now, pay later economy is something which is to my personal opinion, doing more harm than good. It is creating a credit culture in India, which was much required. But to buy even the consumer durables, your mobile phones, every second thing on EMI, your credit card companies today give any large expense they see, they will give you an option to convert it into EMIs, right? Obviously, and you tend to buy the larger expenses like your cars and your houses on EMIs itself. The personal finance rule is very clear about it. Not more than 40% of your monthly cash salary should go into EMIs, because any amount higher than that will create problems in your overall budgets, will create problems in your savings culture. Basically, the more you part aside as EMI, the lesser you will be able to save aside for yourself and will hamper your long-term wealth creation. So the rule is 40% of your monthly expense, not more than that, goes out as EMI. This rule, Sumaira, incidentally, is also followed by many NBFCs and bank as the first criteria to assess the credit worthiness of a borrower. If a borrower is more leveraged and his monthly outgo is more than 40%, 60% in those cases, they will reject the loan application itself. So 40% is a very, very good threshold beyond which there has to be a red alert.
Okay, but Mohit, the question that everybody is asking is that there are so many rules around, where to invest, how much to invest, at what age, how much to invest. But personal finance also includes the aspect of being able to spend, right? So how much am I allowed to spend?
Oh, look, finally, it's your money. You can spend the way you would want to. But if you really want to create a good, healthy retirement corpus and are in that endeavor of creating long-term wealth, sustainable wealth for yourself, basically, the rule is 50-30-20, which means that not more than 50% of your income when you start your career has to go into routine expenses or household expenses like your groceries and your rents and other things. 30% into your lifestyle or your discretionary expenses, which could be your mobile purchases, your travel, your restaurant bills, your movie bills, and so on and so forth. And at least, I again emphasize the word at least, minimum 20% into your savings or investments. But the rule also goes ahead and says that you have to keep tweaking this formula more in favor of investments as your age grows by, which means when you reach age 40 and beyond, the ratio has to flip aside. That means at that point in time, you have to invest at least 50%. Discretionary expenses could continue to be at 30 and your regular expenses has to come down to 20%. This is assuming that your overall income has increased many folds over that tenure of your working life and you are able to the absolute amount of basic expenses remain almost similar or identical, right? So you have to keep tweaking it in favor of your investments. The more quickly you do that, the higher the proportion of savings and investments in this entire equation, the better your retirement will be and the better your wealth creation journey will be.
Okay. And by the way, I must reiterate that, the rules that Mohit has spoken about, they are generic in nature and, they cannot be applied as is. He's already mentioned that some amount of discretion must be used when you're applying these rules. And, perhaps it's a good idea to also touch base with a personal finance expert. But Mohit, just for somebody who's watching this and, we've given them, almost 12 rules in total, how do these rules sort of work in conjunction with each other? Or, do you choose the rules to apply? I mean, how do you know what works for you?
No, actually, look, these are all very, very practical applications. I think in terms of EMI, yes, look, when you start earning your salary, what is the first thing which will you decide? You will decide how much should I invest. There, the 50-30-20 rule comes straight up into application. The second thing which you will decide is, do I need an emergency corpus and how much should that ideally be? So the emergency corpus rule of 3x comes into play. Then as you move ahead a year, 2 years down the line, you would want to leverage yourself, buy your house, buy your car, or whatever little expenses, a little higher expense. And then the rule of EMI will kick into it, right? And once you are into that cycle where you are paying EMIs, you are saving, investing, and that's when you will start bothering as your investment keeps growing. You will start wondering whether my asset allocation is right. Do I need something in debt? How much should be in equity? What are the right assets to have? And that's where your asset allocation, equity debt rule will come into play, right? And then as you really cross that minimum threshold of investments, you grow in age, your investments grow, you will start wondering, when am I doubling my wealth? When am I tripling my wealth? And how will my retirement look like? Will we have sufficient corpus at that point in time? So at that point in time, you will have to start putting those small mathematical numbers and think that when am I actually moving a square in my life, which is doubling or tripling or whatever? And will I have sufficient retirement corpus for myself, which is the basic equation which everyone wants to solve for. So my sense is all of these, Sumaira, at some point in time will come into play in one's life. Whether they come at one go or they come at different stages is a different object, is a different thing altogether. But all these rules will definitely come handy in your personal finance journey.
I know, Mohit, you said to start with the rules on, allocation first between expenses and investment. But I think most people want to start with this rule of 72, 114, 144. So I hope you have heard, Mohit, that rule comes last. Please use it practically and, not as is. Personal finance is very, very easy provided we follow the steps. Mohit, thank you very much for joining in and for talking about the practical rules of investing. With that, it's a wrap on this special edition of Money, 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 and it's time for me to say goodbye. Thank you for watching.